Welcome, my name is John Blom. I have the privilege of being the 2025 Washington Realtors President. I'm here with Mary Hull-Drury, Government Affairs Director. Since the 105-day legislative session recently ended, we thought it might be good timing to review what happened. To start off, the session began on January 13th, and right off the bat, we had some headwinds. There was a new governor, new administrative appointments. Between 25 and 30% of the legislators were new in their seats. Either because they were newly elected or moved from the House to the Senate. The margins changed between the two caucuses in both chambers, resulting in both the House and Senate becoming more progressive. And it takes legislators time to get to know their new caucuses and their new positions. Another issue that was identified in the second half of last year is that revenue projections were not keeping up with the amount of money needed to continue offering state services, resulting in a projected $16 billion budget deficit to start the year. This is on top of existing problems that continue to get worse, specifically the housing shortage and the affordability crisis that we see on a daily basis. The weight of these challenges affected nearly all legislative business conducted during the 105-day session. And in hindsight, Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck characterized this session as grueling and brutal. And Mary, I think you and the team would definitely agree with that sentiment. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Many of us experienced some pretty significant emotional aging this session. Although, since it was a challenge, there's no denying that, but there was a lot of good work done to increase housing supply. So a couple of bills, House Bill 1096 by Representative Barkas, simplifies the administrative process in all cities to divide existing residential lots into two lots, and to obtain building permits for middle housing types and single-family dwellings. There was also House Bill 1403 by Representative Taylor, which clarifies statutory warranty for new construction of condominiums and provides optional exemptions from those statutory warranties for 12 units or less. Another important bill was House Bill 1576 by Representative Wallen, which provides that a city may not designate a property as historic unless it's at least 40 years old, and the designation has the consent of the owner. There are some exemptions for truly historic buildings, though. Additionally, Senate Bill 5559, unit lot subdivisions, otherwise known as ULSs, have been commonly used for townhome construction under legislation that passed in 2023. So this bill standardizes those procedures within all cities under the State Subdivision Act and requires certain disclosures.
All those should help with the housing supply. In addition, I know the team worked on Senate Bill 5148 from Senator Bateman. This allows the Department of Commerce to check the GMA housing element of a city that doesn't meet housing supply needs or affordability standards. Alternatively, cities can ask Commerce to review their GMA housing element, and if they are found non-compliant, they must take corrective action. A county or city also cannot refuse an affordable or moderate income housing project unless very specific conditions are met. Another bill, Senate Bill 5471 by Senator Gaynor, allows counties to rezone unincorporated UGAs or LAMERDs, urban growth areas or local areas of more intense rural, limited areas of more intense rural development, to allow middle housing, and provides SEPA and Growth Hearings Board appeals exemptions for such county zoning actions. So those will help with creating housing supply in the more rural areas.
Certainly will.
Senate Bill 5184 from Senator Bateman limits the amount of parking that cities with a population greater than 30,000 can impose. It also removes parking minimums for certain buildings and business types. Senate Bill 5611 by Senator Solomon streamlines and clarifies local government's land use permitting workloads for binding site plans, common interest communities, and project permit time limits, imposing some time limits for how long jurisdictions have to approve those types of projects.
There were also some decent housing supply study bills that passed. Senate Bill 5587 from Senator Cleveland adds to the Washington Center for Real Estate Research reporting requirements to now include an analysis of the estimated housing units and existing housing needs within each county at specific income levels, each county's progress in closing the gap between estimated existing housing units within the county and existing housing needs, and each county's progress in meeting emergency housing, emergency shelters, and permanent supportive housing needs within the county. House Bill 1108 by Representative Clicker directs the Washington State Institute for Public Policy to research, analyze, and determine the primary cost drivers for homeownership and rental housing. House Bill 1516 by Representative Hill. This one is an interesting one in that it conducts a study for condo insurance costs. Essentially, it directs the Office of the Insurance Commissioner to conduct a study regarding different insurance coverage options and approaches to reduce costs related to condo construction defect liability, while also maintaining access to insurance. Finally, there was a budget proviso added to the Office of Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck to review and recommend strategies for large-scale commercial and residential projects. Some of the more challenging bills that passed are House Bill 1217 by Senator Alvarado. This is rent control / rent stabilization. Essentially, it caps annual rent increases at 7% plus CPI, no more than 10%. There is kind of a side note for mobile home and manufactured homes where the annual limit is now capped at 5%. The rent level can be reset with a new tenant, and it does not apply to new construction for 12 years. Rent increase notices have also changed, extended to 90 days from 60 days, and ultimately the law right now is due to expire after 15 years. Another bill is House Bill 1491, which is transit-oriented development, and it was primed by Representative Reed. It establishes a minimum zoning density in TOD station areas, defines minimum area of TOD station areas, and requires 10% of units as affordable housing or 20% as workforce housing. The implementation for the Central Puget Sound on this bill is set for 2029, while Clark and Spokane will see implementations in 2027.
We started off by talking a little bit about the budget deficit, and despite what has been described as the most significant revenue shortfall and the highest increase in taxes in Washington over the last several decades, real estate and brokerage services were not as highly impacted as most other businesses. Earlier in the session, we talked about the $16 to $20 billion budget deficit, and several new taxes were discussed and introduced, including a wealth tax that was opposed by Governor Ferguson and ended up not getting passed into law. But the final tax package does generate over $9 billion in new revenue over the next 4 years. Some of the real estate related bills making up this revenue package include House Bill 2081 by Representative Fitzgibbon, which increased several B&O tax rates and created a temporary business and occupation tax surcharge on large companies. However, it did not increase the B&O tax rate on real estate brokerage services. Right. Another bill, Senate Bill 5814 by Senator Frame, focused on excise tax and sales tax on services. However, it did not add a sales tax to real estate brokerage services, instead focused on IT training, custom website, software development, etc. House Bill 2049 by Representative Berquist originally included an increase of the property tax cap to 3% from the current 1% cap. Ultimately, the bill that passed removed that provision and instead focused on increasing enrichment levies and local effort assistance. Given the inevitability of new and higher taxes, the real estate industry ended the session with far more wins than losses. As of today, Governor Ferguson has signed most bills with a few modest line item vetoes. Mary, just because the session ended doesn't mean the work is done. What's coming up next?
Right, so there has been a vicious rumor circulating here in Olympia that there is the possibility for a special session, either due to what's going on at the federal level regarding funding, and or if the revenue projections come the next revenue forecast report isn't generating the kind of money that the state originally anticipated. We also have 9 special elections in the legislature this year, which is kind of an interesting dynamic and one that we typically don't see, but nonetheless, 2025 is a special year. So there will be 5 special elections in the Senate and 4 in the House. So ultimately, this will be a busy summer to say the least.
Well, Mary, thanks for all the good work that you and your team did this last legislative session. Thanks for being here with us, and as always, thank you for being a member of Washington Realtors.